How's Ella? Oh, you know children. They're adaptable. She's no different. She's just getting on with life.
It's a real shame about her dad, and it was such a silly accident.
It's her mother I worry about. How's she going to manage, especially with another one on the way?
Being hurt at work or becoming ill through work is not something that most of us think about very often. But in Britain, around 200 people a year lose their lives at work. In addition, approximately 150,000 non-fatal injuries are reported each year, and an estimated 2 million people suffer from ill health caused or made worse by work. Injuries can occur in the best-run organisations, and all it can take is a moment's inattention or neglect. Don't think that these accidents can only happen in badly run establishments. Accidents can happen in your workplace no matter where you work or how big or small your company is. Your job does not have to be dangerous, and you do not have to be reckless to be at risk. Injuries and deaths in the workplace can happen to anyone, whatever their experience, age, or gender. However, many injuries and deaths could have easily been avoided if some basic precautions or processes had been implemented. Implementing health and safety measures doesn't have to be expensive, time-consuming, or complicated. In fact, the easiest safety measures often get the best results. In addition, safer and more efficient working practices frequently save money and improve the work environment. Health and safety at work means everyone should take responsibility for their own safety, the safety of their work colleagues, and, if appropriate, members of the public. This DVD is designed to introduce you to health and safety in the workplace. But please remember that wherever you work, your company will also have additional health and safety procedures for you to follow. If you are a supervisor, manager, or employer, you have a legal responsibility to look after your staff. Most organisations will have a set of safety policies and procedures in a written format. It is the employer's responsibility to provide you with this information. And it is your responsibility to follow these rules. A risk assessment is basically a careful inspection of any hazards in your work that may cause harm to people, and then finding ways to reduce these risks. These assessments are then used to ensure that procedures are put into place to make certain work is carried out safely. The procedures should clearly state who does what and when and how they do it. It is always good practice to take a look at the work you do and the surroundings in which you do it to assess any potential dangers yourself. Remember, it's not only you that you need to consider. You also need to consider your workmates and any other people that might be affected by the work you do. Let's now look at some of the causes of accidents that happen at the workplace. What do you think is the most common cause of injuries at work? Slips or trips are the most common cause of injury at work. They happen in all kinds of businesses, but sectors such as food and catering generally report higher than average numbers. Ideally, a slip or trip hazard should be eliminated by whoever discovers it first. If this is not possible, the problem should be reported immediately. The main causes of slip and trip accidents are uneven surfaces and wet floors. Damaged floor coverings and articles left on the floor are also common causes of tripping. Any damaged floor covering should be made safe in the first instance by applying tape to the affected area. This will serve as a temporary remedy until permanent repairs can be made. Care should be taken that any electrical cables do not trail across pathways, and boxes, machinery, or loose items must not be left in areas where people are likely to walk. Any spills should be mopped up straight away, and a warning sign should be placed over the spill until the surface is dry. What other slip or trip hazards might you encounter? How about these? Do you have floors that are wet or can become slippery because of steam or humidity? Do you use unlit areas such as paths or yards in the dark? Are there maintenance or alterations taking place that may introduce slipping and tripping hazards? Thousands of people are exposed to all kinds of hazardous substances at work. These can include liquids or other chemicals that people make or work with directly, or they can be dust, vapour fumes, or bacteria. If exposure is not prevented or properly controlled, illnesses can occur, ranging from dermatitis and asthma to cancer and sometimes even death. The Control of Substances Hazardous to Health Regulations, or COSH as it's usually called, applies to activities involving the use of any hazardous substance. All employers and employees have to adhere to these regulations whenever they deal with substances that may be hazardous to health. Exposure to hazardous substances can be caused by skin contact, splashes into the eyes, swallowing, or inhaling. Remember, hazardous substances can be found in many areas. Cleaning materials, sprays and paints, manufacturing processes, adhesives, wood dust, solvents, oils, grease, and exhaust fumes. In reality, the list is endless, as most workers will at some time or other be exposed to some form of hazardous substance. Let's look at a few everyday examples. A cleaner splashing a corrosive liquid like bleach on their skin could receive a burn or have an allergic reaction, which will not usually have a long-term effect. However, splashing the same substance into an eye could cause permanent sight damage. This is our second example, building blocks. They look harmless, don't they? Admittedly, if they fell on you, they would be dangerous. But if the work involves cutting materials like this, then inhaling the dust can cause permanent lung damage if the dust contains silica particles. Silica particles can be found in set concrete or the surface treatment of hardened concrete. How about breathing in that clean, healthy country air? It must be great to be a farmer. But did you know that agricultural dusts like grain and plant dusts, fungal spores, animal dander, bacteria, and endotoxins can cause diseases such as asthma, bronchitis, and farmer's lung? Suppliers of hazardous substances have to provide information to users, including safety data sheets and proper labelling. So if you are using a substance for the first time, always read the safety information before you do anything else. Protective clothing may also be required before handling some substances. Protective clothing is often referred to as personal protective equipment, or PPE. PPE comes in all shapes and sizes to provide protection and safety for a wide range of work activities. PPE can include protective clothing, masks, hard hats, ear defenders, gloves, or even full suits with breathing apparatus. PPE equipment should always be kept in good order and should be replaced if it is damaged or faulty. PPE should always be worn if it is required for a task. OK, let's move on to something that everyone undertakes in some form or other in the workplace: manual handling. Manual handling is transporting or supporting loads by hand or using bodily force. Now, most people immediately think that manual handling injuries are caused by attempting to move large, heavy loads. But in fact, many people hurt their backs, arms, hands or feet while lifting small, everyday-sized loads that are not very heavy. Manual handling work includes any task that includes lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling, reaching, or repetitive handling. More than a third of all over 3-day injuries reported each year to the HSE and to local authorities are due to manual handling accidents. Training on both manual handling and using equipment safely can help prevent injury, as can using any provided lifting equipment. If continuous ongoing lifting is necessary, it's always worth considering whether there's a better way of performing the task. For example, can a mechanical aid be used? Whenever manual handling is involved, the following should be kept in mind. The biggest risk is lifting heavy articles either from the floor or from above head height. Therefore, where possible, it is better to store heavy items at waist height. If lifting from above head height, a suitable stepladder should always be used. When lifting heavy loads, it is far better to share the lift with a colleague or even eliminate the lift by using mechanical lifting or transporting equipment if it is available. If a load is to be transported, any hazards such as stairs, obstacles or narrow doorways must be taken into consideration. A load should not be carried if it prevents you from seeing where you are going. Always check the weight of the load before attempting to lift it. This will give you a better idea of how heavy it is, or even convince you that it is too heavy to lift safely on your own. When lifting, your back should be kept straight and your legs should be used to provide the lifting power. The legs and buttocks contain the largest muscles in the body, so it makes sense to use these to provide the lifting power, rather than risk damaging the many smaller muscles in the back. While lifting, the load should be kept close to your body, and any undue twisting should be avoided. If your work role does require considerable lifting, then further training on manual handling, either by DVD or a specialist course, is advisable. Another common problem is repetitive strain injury, or RSI, as it's often called. Repetitive strain injury occurs when people do recurring or forceful manual activities in awkward postures for prolonged periods of time. Injuries can be due to operating machinery or repetitive keyboard operations. These can cause muscular aches and pains which may be temporary, but if this work is not properly managed and the early symptoms are not recognised and treated, they can progress to a chronic and disabling disorder. This type of injury should be reported as soon as the first symptoms are detected, as cures can be as simple as rearranging work areas or adjusting or changing chairs. Using a computer or other kinds of display screen equipment can also give rise to RSI, back problems, or other musculoskeletal disorders if the layout of workstations is poor or insufficient breaks are taken. You can help prevent this happening by ensuring your workstation and work area is properly set up. Let's look at this in a little more detail. First of all, adjust the height of your seat so that your forearms are horizontal while typing. Chair backs should be adjusted so that they support the lower back, with your feet either flat on the floor or supported on a footrest. And areas below your desk should be free of clutter so that you can move your legs freely. Try to take a break of 5 minutes every hour by changing the work you're doing. This could be simply answering the phone or doing some other routine task. When setting up your workspace, the top of a monitor should be just below eye level, so that when you relax your head and neck slightly, your eyes align with the center of the screen when the monitor is tilted towards you. Monitors are usually fitted with controls that allow you to adjust brightness and contrast to comfortable levels. The screen should not flicker and should be easy to read, with no glare or reflections from either direct or indirect light sources. It's usually better placing screens at right angles to any windows to avoid direct light on the screens, but blinds or shades on windows can be used to reduce any glare. Lights fitted with shades or diffusers reduce the incidence of reflection and glare. Falls from heights at work account for around 60 deaths and just under 4,000 major injuries each year. The Working at Height Regulations 2005 apply to everyone involved in working at any height where there is a risk of a fall which could cause personal injury. A place is at height if a person could be injured by falling from it. For example, a cleaner or office assistant would be working at height if they used a stepladder. An employer must do everything reasonably possible to prevent anyone from falling. This includes avoiding all work at height wherever possible, using suitable equipment to aid any work at height if there is no other method of carrying the work out from a place which is not at height, doing everything possible to minimise the height at which the person may fall from, and minimising the consequences should someone fall. Let's look at some working at height questions that might increase safety if they are asked before any work is undertaken. Can you avoid the need to work at height? Could the work be done using long-handled tools or by bringing it down to ground level? Are the people performing the task properly trained and supervised? And do they have the right equipment and know how to use it safely? Is it safer to use a tower scaffold or a mobile elevating work platform rather than a ladder? These can often be hired at relatively low rates and may even save money as they can enable the work to be performed much faster. Accidents involving work equipment happen all the time. Many are serious or even fatal. Work equipment can come in many forms, ranging from production lines through to machine tools, office machines, lifting equipment, hand tools, and pressure washers. To minimise the dangers when working with machines, the following are important. Use the right equipment for the job. Make sure the equipment is safe to use. Ensure it receives regular inspections and ensure employees receive training to use the equipment safely and follow manufacturers' or suppliers' instructions. Electricity can kill, but even non-fatal shocks can cause burns and other severe and permanent injuries to both limbs and body. Shocks from faulty equipment may also lead to falls from ladders, scaffolds, or other work platforms. All electrical equipment should receive regular safety checks. If you know that the safety check has expired or the equipment is faulty or damaged, then don't use it as you're putting yourself at risk. Instead, report it so that it can be repaired or replaced so that you can continue to work safely. Only qualified people with appropriate technical knowledge and experience should work on or service electrical equipment. One of the biggest dangers present in any building is the risk of fire. Fire requires three elements to exist: material to ignite, a means of ignition, and the presence of oxygen. To prevent fires occurring, it's important to control any means of ignition, such as open flames, matches, heaters, and electric appliances. If you hear a fire alarm, you should immediately leave the building by the emergency exit routes. Don't pick up any personal items or clothing. As you leave the building, close doors and windows behind you. Fire doors must be totally accessible. Furniture or other items must never be placed where they obstruct fire routes or doors. All emergency evacuation routes should be clearly marked, but if you're unsure how to evacuate the building in case of an emergency, contact your line manager or your health and safety officer. If you're the first person to notice a fire, then first alert your work colleagues by sounding the alarm. If you don't know how to, find out how to raise the alarm in the event of a fire. Everyone should make sure that they are familiar with the fire safety procedures, including the location of the nearest fire alarm call point. Once you have sounded the alarm, you must only attempt to extinguish a fire if you are entirely sure that this can be done without risk to yourself and that you have a clear escape route. If you intend to use a fire extinguisher, you should know which extinguisher is suitable for what type of fire. Remember, in some instances, it may not be company policy for non-trained employees to tackle fires. This is often the case where other dangers might exist. For example, fumes, spirits, or fuels. Using the wrong extinguisher can be dangerous or even spread the flames, as shown here, where 1 cup of water is poured onto a pan of hot cooking oil. Extinguishers are identified by different coloured labels. Water extinguishers are red and can be used on solid materials like wood, paper and organic materials. Water extinguishers must never be used on or near live electrical equipment or very hot oil fires. Foam extinguishers are cream-coloured and can also be used on solids, and as most foam extinguishers are water-based, they should never be used on electrical equipment. Black carbon dioxide and blue powder extinguishers can both be used on electrical fires and flammable liquids. The safest extinguisher to use on hot oil fires in kitchens is the yellow-labelled wet chemical extinguisher. These cool the oil and turn it into a soap-like solution. So far, this DVD has been all about risks and prevention. But unfortunately, sometimes things do go wrong. If someone has been hurt or fallen ill at work, it's important to take care of them straight away and make any dangerous conditions safe. Everyone should be familiar with their company's first aid procedure and know who to contact when required. Notice boards will usually provide information about first aiders and any local procedures such as who to call. Reporting accidents and ill health at work is a legal requirement that all companies must adhere to. Companies use different systems ranging from local accident books to national online central logging of reports. The enforcing authorities use this information to see the big picture of where injuries, ill health and accidental losses are occurring. There are some people within the workplace to whom special consideration or rules apply. For instance, young people below 18, pregnant women, and disabled persons. A risk assessment should be undertaken for young people under 18 that takes into consideration their possible inexperience and their need for awareness of existing or potential risks. In addition, the stature and strength of a young person needs to be considered in identifying what can and cannot be undertaken. The Health and Safety Executive publish regulations that control what the young can and can't do, and what risks they should not be exposed to. Being pregnant or a new mum should not be a barrier to continuing work. However, the law does require that an employer takes care to protect the health of new and expectant mothers. The law provides them with a number of rights, for example, the need to avoid carrying heavy objects or standing for long periods. If a person has a disability, an employer is required to treat them no less favourably than they would treat any other employee. People with disabilities have a number of rights that allow them to perform their work without undue hindrance. This DVD has, we hope, given you an insight into health and safety at work. Work is so varied and covers such a wide range of disciplines, this DVD can only provide you with an introduction to the risks that you might encounter in the workplace. We also hope that it will encourage you to think and operate safely when tackling any safety risks that you might encounter in your own work. Taking the time to step back and say, is what I'm doing the safe way of doing it? After all, your safety isn't just about you. It's also about people who know and care about you. And most importantly, it's about everybody who needs you.